Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Arielle here.
Cal here.
And today we're gonna do a reaction video to why the UK's economy stopped working. So it should be interesting. I have a couple of opinions as someone who, if you guys don't know, I recently moved to the UK 3 months ago. So I'm interested in seeing this. I think everyone that I told I was moving to the UK was like, why? Like, this is the worst time to move. What are you doing? So let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Britain's economy is under incredible strain, more than you may realise.
Austerity through to successive, extraordinarily expensive and damaging crises has left the UK with an enormous debt burden.
Compared to our friends here or here,
which country isn't in debt?
I don't know.
When we talk about debt now, I think it's so normalised that, like, does it mean anything? Like,
how do you think the UK exiting the EU?
Oh, we're not getting into that.
No. Do you think it was executed well? Let's ask that.
No.
On the outside looking in, it's just like, what is going on over there? I remember, like, there's a lot of disagreements that happen between the EU and the UK. So it's like, almost like they wanted to make you guys suffer for leaving.
Oh, Europe wanted us to suffer because us leaving basically reduced the size of Europe, like money going in from 27 countries or whatever it was to the size of 9 countries. Like, we put that much money into Europe. So, like, yeah, there's that. But, like, we should have left Europe years ago, like decades ago.
Right.
We had so many industries that, like breweries and so on, that no longer exist because they've been shipped to Amsterdam and taken over by the Heineken Corporation or other corporations similar. And
to me, it seems like the European Union kind of operates like the US, and the fact that it's like
mafia, like a cartel. Like
it's kind of like you guys are all different states instead of different countries.
We would be completely behind Europe. It's a great idea if the candidates were voted in. They're not. And it's like, it's a big yeah, sorry, I'm getting like completely off track here.
He's like super passionate about politics.
I'm not super passionate, but like I feel like there's a lot of people that are very blasé about like what goes on in politics, and it, like, I don't know, I feel like people love to read the headlines and take things from that, whereas they should actually look into it and try and understand it.
Yeah.
And the history behind it. But yeah, anyways, let's get back to the video.
Let's play it.
That's for another video, I guess.
or in fact in any major advanced economy, national debt in the UK has ballooned the most since COVID. But it's not just borrowing that's an issue. Look at tax revenue as a percentage of GDP, basically the share of the country's output that the government takes to pay for what the public needs. It's almost as high as when what the public mostly needed were bomb shelters. And in an election...
So what I will say is...
wipe on camera as well. Rishi Sunak.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Okay, so what I will say is that when I came to the UK, I was shocked by your tax structure. There's a lot of taxes that is paid, especially if you are earning over £50,000 a year.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put on the screen the difference between the US tax structure and the UK tax structure, and you can kind of see the difference there.
Yeah, I think this country is slowly, like, little by little, things are being not taken away as such, but like things are being implemented, and like we're slowly becoming more and more like having less and less options, and things are being taxed higher, and it's like much harder for people to earn anything for the future. So
yeah. One thing that I will say as someone who relocated from the US to the UK is that the salaries are lower in the UK than they are in the US.
And the argument that a Brit will give is, oh, but we have free healthcare. It's like, but look at the state of it. Like, and look at how much more we're paying in tax. Like, there's just so many more things that, I'm not saying America's better. It is in some ways. The UK is better in some ways. Europe's better in other ways. Like, each has its own thing, but like, there's just better ways to do all of it. And yeah, there's a lot of
people will also say like the cost of living is lower in the UK, and I don't know how it is in the North. As someone who moved from the UK or from the US to the UK and has witnessed the cost of living in both South Florida and Southern England, the level to which you get paid more doesn't like accommodate for how low the UK gets paid. So you can say like the cost of living is higher in the US than it is in the UK, but in terms of how much more you get paid, it kind of like trumps that. So I just don't get that argument. But I guess the whole, like you said, the universal health care, that's the positive there. But let's go ahead and play.
Yeah, this is supposed to be like a 10-minute video.
Yeah, that's a massive problem for whoever's tasked with writing a new spending plan.
Can't raise taxes, can't really let debt go much higher, and yet public services are crying out for more money.
Britain's appointed as many prime ministers in the last 5 years as Taylor Swift's released re-recorded studio albums.
We all know how
Four,
they
to
market
be precise. So the question is, can a new UK government fix a problem its predecessors couldn't?
The next government is inheriting an incredibly
When did
difficult
this video
legacy.
come out?
The burden of taxes on the economy at a 70-year high. Public services are creaking at the seams. Record waiting lists in the National Health Service. Parts of the justice system have had nearly a halving of the number of courts that are operating.
You get the picture, and it's not a...
Yeah, that's something you see here quite a lot. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but no, I don't think it is. But over here, the court system's not working properly, so pretty much people are getting arrested for stuff and then let out on a suspended sentence because there's no room in prisons. And then, of course, later down the line, they reoffend, and it's so much worse than what it originally was. And yeah, it's just...
We have some of that in the US as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of places have some variation of it, but like how light our sentences are ridiculous, and that's why so many people like come here to commit crime, is because they're going to get let off with it pretty much. Like it's beyond ridiculous.
Pretty one. Some of this is down to government spending during the pandemic, which was bigger than any G7 economy as a share of GDP, bar the US.
We are providing £280 billion to get our country through coronavirus.
But here's the thing, most of that money was borrowed from creditors when interest rates were down around here, at historic lows, and repayments were expected to be relatively manageable.
0% credit card.
And they might have been. But then...
the Russian assault has begun.
The largest invasion of a neighboring country in Europe since World War II.
The invasion triggered an energy crisis, as Europe's access to vital Russian oil and gas was choked by sanctions and trade restrictions.
UK households will pay almost triple the price to keep their homes this winter compared with a year ago.
We're in the middle of a national...
I can't remember what our bill went from. It went from something like £450 a year to like nearly £900 a year. I can't remember what it was now, but I can't remember if that was for home insurance or what. But like, I mean, this is like,
I know,
how many years ago now?
I think it was a couple years ago. I know some friends that I had like in the UK that were talking about how their energy bill doubled. So that's
more than doubled.
That's crippling.
Way more than doubled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's crippling if like your salary's staying the same, but your bills are going up.
The only thing that was beneficial to that period is you weren't going out and spending your money elsewhere. Well, you couldn't have anyway, due to the bills and everything. But yeah,
emergency. People are really scared, and families don't know if they can warm their homes this winter.
The cost of living began to soar, and the UK was once again the second most generous with financial support, behind only Italy.
Overall, £400 billion or so in additional spending, all of which went into debt, and all of which gave us the biggest increase in debt as a share of our economy of any G7 economy.
The twin impacts of the pandemic and the energy crisis pushed our inflation rate to new highs, and forced central banks to ramp up the interest rate in an effort to halt it. And if you're lucky enough to own your own home, you may remember that time your mortgage payments went up by hundreds of pounds.
I heard about that too.
Seemingly overnight. Well, this is why. But for the UK government, it wasn't repayments for a lovely house, but for hundreds of billions of pounds of national debt.
The combination of those two events has increased how much it costs to pay for our debt from about £40 billion a year to about £100 billion a year. That £60 billion increase in spending just on debt interest is equivalent to the entire defence budget.
As a result, there are tens of billions fewer pounds left to spend on anything else, from health to police to defence. But the extra borrowing on those crises didn't come with faster growth. In fact, the UK economy has barely expanded past pre-pandemic levels. You can see here, only Germany's grown less than the UK in that time, as it was so dependent on cheap Russian gas that it faced an existential crisis when the taps were turned off. Germany's also spending a far lower proportion of its GDP on services.
And they made the mistake of trying to go green.
So the challenge to the new government is, how do you pay off a huge pile of debt without raising taxes or borrowing or squeezing public services even harder? Well, one of the best ways to grow an economy is to make a nation more productive.
What happens with improving productivity is that for the same amount of work, you get more out of it. It doesn't mean what many people think it means, which is just that you have to work harder. If you are working in an old-fashioned newspaper and you move to a tech company, the tech company is more profitable, has greater margins, and you could work less hard, but your contribution in terms of productivity to the economy could be greater because effectively you're working smarter.
In the wake of Brexit and COVID, the UK is in a unique position here.
We did inherit a situation where output per head productivity in the economy had already been weakening quite dramatically after the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009.
Which you can see here, altering a trend that had been in motion since the 1970s.
You then had the impact of Brexit, which had a particularly sharp effect on investment, which we saw feed almost immediately into growth and again pulling down our overall efficiency, our output per head. And then COVID has added this extra legacy.
Which means we need our heads to be working even smarter. But for the time being, we need bodies too in the workforce. And here we have another problem. Across the major advanced economies, every country saw an increase in the proportion of people finding jobs and going into the workforce after the pandemic. But look at the UK. We lost workers. More people fell into long-term sickness, and people just dropped out.
There's 1 million people, in a sense, missing from the labour force, many of them claiming disability benefit or sitting on NHS wait.
People were starting to see, like, is this really what life is? Like, you just go to work and, like, they're starting to, I don't know, realise that, like, I think a lot of people...
Depressing. Work is depressing sometimes.
So if you're finding it depressing earning more money in the US, imagine what people here that are earning much less money.
That makes sense.
And suddenly you have a lack of workers. Like, and on top of Brexit or whatever, with like not allowing foreign workers into the country unless it's for certain reasons or whatever. Like, yeah, it does make sense. Like, the government has just gone about everything in the complete wrong way. They should have made it a haven, reduced VAT, like done all these things to boost the economy and boost productivity, and they just didn't do any of it because most of the people in the government were Remainers.
Yeah.
And so, like, the people...
What are Remainers? What is that?
People who wanted to remain in Europe.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
I get it.
Brexiteers or Leavers.
Brexiteers?
Yeah,
oh,
Leavers or Remainers. And
Leavers,
well, they're all
Remainers,
Brexiteers and, like, Exiters, Brexiters. Like, Leavers, the same thing. And then Remainers, which were the ones who wanted to remain. And most of the Conservative government, like, were, like, maybe, I don't know, like half a Leave, half a Remain. So, like, but if you all have to vote together, you're never going to pass anything.
Yeah.
So
one of the drivers of growth over the last decade or two, prior to the pandemic, had been the increase in the participation rate.
So the proportion of people able to work actually doing so.
By going into reverse, that has caused a very particular British problem.
Participation has not come back since the lockdowns. That represents a lot of missing productive capacity.
This is all monumental.
You could literally just close this down to truck drivers. I can't remember what the statistic is, but pretty much everything you buy at some point has been on a truck. And by them shutting down EU workers being able to come into the country and work, you stop, like, I don't know what it is, like a huge percentage of the trucking workforce. And so the government now has to do things like you now can go straight into taking your truck test instead of like gradually building up to it, and like so the government has to take like drastic action to be able to make up for these workers.
Yeah.
But like it's like they didn't see this coming, but like really, if somebody just looked into it, like it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm getting a bit too passionate about this.
Pressure for the next government to withstand and relieve. They need to get the population able to work doing so, and in a more productive capacity. Then there's wiggle room to deal with high interest rates and bring down national debt, freeing up tax revenue to bolster public services and support the people unable to work in the first place.
Everyone agrees this is an enormous challenge, but if it's one a new government can pull off, the potential gains are massive.
That's all very nice and well, but I do not believe either government, whether it's there's only one type of government I think will solve it, but I don't think a Conservative government will solve it, and I definitely don't think a Labour government is going to solve it. They're just going to go through all the teething problems that like any new government goes through.
This was nice, short and sweet, and I think it's interesting. I learned
and
some
hella
stuff.
depressing if you're British.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, let us know like what your thoughts are. Like, are we way off the mark? A lot of the reaction is more Callum because he's more familiar with the UK economy than I am. All right, guys, so thank you so much for watching. Let us know below what you thought about the video and about our reactions. Were we way off? Were we on the mark?
Yeah, please let us know if there's anything you want us to react and view and have our opinion on. Yeah, we really could do with the suggestions, and it really helps with the engagement with you. So also give us a like and comment and subscribe, and if you enjoy the content, and if not, give us a thumbs down. And
what?
No, I'm saying if you don't like it, tell us.
Gosh.
We'll see you later,
guys
you
next time.
sexy YouTube mother lovers.